Hey there, Solemn Salmon here. As many of you will know, I'm not the biggest fan of the Fleet Manager introduced in the Cherry update. Whilst it can be a useful tool, it's a tad broken and unintuitive. One of the best fixes for many of its problems is to design your ships manually, deactivating auto-generate and using auto-best with caution. Whilst annoying, this gives you the opportunity to really get into the nitty-gritty of ship design, making sure your corvettes and cruisers are up to scratch, maximising defence and offence, lasers and kinetics. If you don't fancy such constant micromanagement, then hopefully this video is for you. I'm going to take a look at some of the best ship loadouts at various points in the game, with brief discussion of the pros and cons of various weapons and components. Bear in mind that these are largely my opinion and what I've found to work, and might not represent the mathematically optimum loadouts. As such, if you think you've got a better suggestion, I'd love to hear it and try it out for myself, so make sure to drop a comment. Anyway, let's get started. Titans. Introduced in the 2.0 update, Titans are the flagships of your fleet, the largest, meanest kid in the playground, bristling with large cannons and a huge, massive laser on the nose. Capable of extreme long-range combat, Titans also boast 12 defensive slots and 3 auxiliary slots, plus the ability to load an aura to apply a buff or debuff to the entire battle. For all their firepower though, Titans are actually the least versatile ship class, featuring no alternative sections, alongside horrendous evasion and speed. Titans are in your fleet for a single purpose: to take hits and dish them out in equal measure. They're starbase and battleship killers, pretty much ineffective against smaller swarms. Let's get my usual Titan build on screen, because this video is going to feature the fewest builds of any in the series, just 2. That isn't to say that these are the only viable options, but in my opinion, the one on screen is generally the best one to use, and the alternative I'll show in a moment will allow for some discussion on potential variation. First thing to mention with Titans is the gigantic laser on the bow. Every Titan will feature the perdition beam. The bow offers no alternatives, and it's a weapon of both destructive power and missed opportunity. Featuring a range of 5,000 to 10,000 damage, with an average damage of just under 300 per tick, the beam is immense, crippling anything it hits. It also comes with, for its size, a relatively decent 85% accuracy, a solid plus 50% armor damage, and plus 25% damage to hull. This, though, is the missed opportunity. With its incredible range, the perdition beam is more than likely the first weapon to fire in a battle, and with a cooldown of almost 22, it takes a while to fire again. Thus, most of the damage the beam does will suffer from its minus 25% damage to shields. As with the Giga Cannon being the preferred option to the Tachyon Lance on a battleship, even though it's a frickin' giant laser beam, a kinetic alternative Titan weapon would have been awesome. As you literally can't change it though, it's an annoyance you have to live with. The final 2 sections, the core and the stern, also offer no alternatives, but slightly more opportunity for choice. You're locked into choosing 6 large size weapons, but which weapons is up to you. For this build, I've gone for 4 Neutron Torpedoes and 2 kinetic artillery, essentially the same weapons I'd use on a battleship, but with kinetics to account for the perdition beam's loss against shields. Neutron Torpedoes are amazing, with the highest raw damage of any large slot weapons, plus 50% damage to armor and plus 75% damage to hull. These weapons really are ship killers. Kinetic artillery is great for knocking out shields, with an awesome 45.7 damage per tick, low cooldown, and plus 100% damage to shields, not forgetting the handy plus 25 damage to hull. With this combination of weapons, you're going to be doing some savage damage to enemy fleets, but the real struggle will be actually hitting them. None of these weapons boast any kind of tracking at all, so you should probably forget about hitting corvettes and try to support your Titan with another ship class to deal with them. You can boost your accuracy by taking advantage of having 3 auxiliary slots and loading up on auxiliary fire controls, whilst the tracking aura will aid not just the Titan, but your fleet as a whole in taking down those evasive swarms. Now, I mentioned an alternative build, so let's throw that one on screen. Don't take this one at face value, as a lot of its elements are there for discussion purposes rather than actual use. With these ship builds, I always try to present options that could theoretically function on their own. They're balanced in terms of damage and use. My main Titan build is an exception. It's designed for use in a fleet featuring a number of Giga Cannon battleships to account for the perdition beam's loss against shields, and another class to counter corvettes, either destroyer or cruiser. This build switches it up. 4 kinetics instead of 4 neutrons balances out damaged shields, with the final 2 slots then given to neutrons for armor and hull annihilation. In the aura slot, I've got the Quantum Destabilizer, which debuffs enemy fire rate. If you have the ability to field 2 Titans, definitely have one loaded with this aura. The boost to your tracking is the priority in my opinion, but debuffing enemy fire rate at the same time seriously hampers their firepower. The final point of note is the auxiliary slots. I've thrown hull regenerative tissue into the mix, which is awesome for fixing up your ships while they're wandering around enemy territory. Another alternative would be a shield capacitor, to increase your defences. Hopefully these ship builds will give you an edge over your enemies, but bear in mind, the technologies you research and the challenges you face will more than likely require you to play around with these options, so don't be afraid to switch it up if you feel you need to. Anyhow, like and subscribe if this video was of use, and don't forget to drop any suggestions in the comments. This has been Solemn Salmon. Until next time.